Hey everyone, welcome to Bridge Stories. This is our new podcast giving people space and time to tell their stories of encountering God and being changed by Him. We hope you're encouraged by these stories and also that you leave excited that you know a lot of really awesome people a little bit better. So sit back and enjoy. Okay, here we go. Well, we're back on our podcast and I'm here with Phyllis. You can say hi.
Hi. Hi. I am.
I think you might be the most famous person at Bridge Community Church.
Oh, that's not true.
It's 100% true.
No.
Yeah, you know, it's like celebrity status. Like people know of you and they know about you. They might not know you, but they know about you.
Oh, do you want my autograph or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's
We'll have you
fun.
autograph the table when you're done.
This is fun to be here.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I think people are going to be enlightened. I think people are going to like you even more than they already do.
Oh, you warm my heart. I'm going to start crying.
Don't do it. It's going on the internet. You don't want to cry.
Okay.
So why don't you just introduce yourself, Phyllis? Tell us about who you are and where you're at in life right now, and we'll start talking about your life. But just introduce yourself.
Well, right now my name is Phyllis Weiss, and I'm part here of Zion, and now it's called Bridge.
Right.
We were Zion when we first started, and my husband was the founder of the church, and I'm just being blessed because when I'm here with all the people, I just feel so much love, and it's just a blessing. And this is a blessing, Andy, to be here with you. I love you like a grandson. You know that, don't you?
Yeah, I do know that.
Yes.
You're, sometimes I introduce you as my friend, and then people are like, oh, she's like 60 years older than you, right?
That's right.
I'm like 60 years, I'm 33. Phyllis is not 93 years
No,
old.
but I'm 84.
I wasn't going to make you tell everyone
It's
that.
okay. I lived that long. God gave me those years, so
Is it strange for you to sit right here on the stage and look out and have nobody sitting here?
yes, it is. But that's okay. But I'm here with you, and we have those over there, and so.
Okay, so I know you as Phyllis Weiss,
Correct.
but you were not always Phyllis Weiss.
No, I was not.
I know a little bit about your background, but I think people will be blown away if you were to tell us a little bit about young Phyllis. What was your
My maiden name?
yeah,
It was Hannerfeld.
Hannerfeld.
And I think the only Hannerfelds in the phone book at that time, there were phone books back then, that was our family.
You know I'm old enough to know what a phone book is.
Oh, are you? Okay.
Yeah.
So then you know what I mean.
Yeah, we used to call collect, and it was hanging on the big fat ring in a payphone
right.
booth. Yeah,
That's right.
they got rid of those not
Yeah.
a while back, but I can recall.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay, so
So what would you like to
Phyllis
know?
Hannerfeld.
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 J-N-E-R.
Okay.
F-E-L-D. Mm-hmm.
Okay, you did not grow up in California.
No, I did not. I grew up in the Bronx, New York. In case you thought this was a Southern accent. But this is where I was from, the Bronx.
And what was the Bronx like when you were a kid? Just paint a picture for people, because I know a little bit. You're not talking about the modern Bronx. You're talking about very, very specific time frame of living in the Bronx.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
paint a picture for us. What was that like?
I was born in the Bronx, so I lived there for 24 years.
Okay.
And it was just a beautiful neighborhood. It was mostly Jewish people because I'm Jewish by birth, and we had some Gentile friends, but most of us that lived in that area were Jewish, and it was just you can walk on the street at night. I remember going out with my friends, and we'd go to the movies and go for pizza. And it was like 10, 11 o'clock at night, and I'd walk home. We all walked to a certain plus spot, and then we'd leave and go to our own homes. Not homes, it was apartments. We lived in apartment dwellings.
Yeah.
And if anyone is familiar with the Bronx, we lived off the Grand Concourse, which was a very nice area in those years. It was a beautiful area.
And have you been back to that area?
Yes, and it's really changed quite a bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you grew up in a largely Jewish neighborhood.
Correct.
I think that I'm guessing that you're imagining your childhood, but I'm going to throw this out there. I seriously doubt anyone listening is going to have a really clear idea of what it looks like to be born and raised as a young woman in a Jewish neighborhood in New York.
Okay.
So just explain a little bit about a Jewish neighborhood. Like how are Jewish people interacting? What are the things that were uniquely Jewish about the Bronx?
Well, you just knew you belonged in that group because To be honest with you, I didn't realize there was such a thing as a Christian.
Oh, okay.
Because anyone to me that wasn't Jewish was a Christian. I couldn't understand about, well, why is it like they're Baptists and there's Presbyterians and Methodists? What is all of that? They all believe in the same Jesus. They couldn't, and Catholics, of course, and they couldn't marry each other because they were from different religions. And I thought, well, we're Jewish. We can only marry Jewish boys. Jewish girls marry Jewish boys, and Jewish boys marry Jewish girls. That's just known. And so your life just becomes involved in the Jewish world. And so, like I said, I thought anybody that wasn't Jewish was Christian.
So that was almost synonymous with just like Gentile, or?
Yes, that's exactly correct.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're growing up in the Bronx. You know what? I actually was thinking about this conversation, and I realized I don't know anything about your mom and dad.
Oh, well, they were, very devout Jews.
Okay.
We never really. My dad went to temple on the high holidays, and then we would go to see him at the temple. My grandparents were we were all Orthodox. We kept kosher homes. But my grandparents, granddads, not my grandmothers, because the men were the ones that went to the temple.
Right.
So they would go every morning and every night. I mean, that was just part of their life. Of course, in my parents' generation, it was more that they went on the high holidays.
Okay.
It wasn't more like they were raised. And of course, like today, it's so different. Even today, I remember back then, you wouldn't dare bring a boy home that wasn't Jewish.
What would happen if you were to bring a boy home?
God, they would not be probably not very nice.
To you or to the boy?
No, well, either way, you just don't do it. You just don't do it, And but now this generation people into marriages. It's so common. It's like my nieces and nephews, none of them have married Jewish girls or guys.
Interesting.
So it's funny, yeah. But in those years, you could not, you wouldn't think. I had a friend that we still keep in touch today. We met in junior high, and we've been buddies forever. And she was seeing a non-Jew, and her parents never even knew it. They met in college, and
so she went out of her way to make sure.
Oh, yeah.
Mom and Dad cannot know this.
Oh, yeah. Nobody knows this.
Interesting.
Nobody knows this, yeah.
So you made mention of it, but I'm just curious. So let's just say teenage Phyllis.
Yes.
You clearly have an idea that there's people who believe in this guy, Jesus.
Yes.
At that point in your life, what do you know about Jesus?
Nothing, except that he was, in our mind, he was just a good man.
Okay.
That the Gentile people made a god out of.
And that was it?
That was it.
Was there ever any airtime given to teach you like that's not true, or it just was?
It was just known. You're Jewish, and the other group believe in Jesus, but we don't. That's not for us.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, it was even hard to say his name. To say Jesus, unless people were using it in a curse way, it was like a bone stuck in your throat. That name, Jesus. Jewish people don't say that name.
So it's just so culturally embedded that you just knew you just don't talk about it. It's not worth talking about.
No, you don't. You just don't. And like I said, it was unfamiliar, so that it was very uncomfortable to even say the name Jesus.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yes. I don't remember, unless we were using it in vain. Like, you just...
Yeah, sure.
But we just didn't say Jesus and talk about Jesus, because he was just a man the Gentiles made a god out of. He was a nice man.
Yeah.
And changed religion. He changed religion. That's what we thought. He changed religions.
So I think sometimes we reduce, you're in your 80s. Sometimes we're guilty of like reducing your childhood to you were Jewish in New York and fast forward. But I'm just curious, so I know your personality now.
Yes.
And your personality has roots from when you were a kid. Were you more like your mom or your dad?
You know what? I don't know that I was like either one of them, to be honest with you. My mother used to say, Phyllis, I wish two of you on you. That's what she did. I wish two of you on you.
So you were a challenging child.
Yes, I probably was. Because they used to call me the Jewish princess.
Okay.
Because I did nothing. But no, and that is the absolute truth. When I got married, I could do nothing. I could literally not boil water.
You didn't even know how that
I
worked.
didn't know what to do.
So who was doing those things for you?
Well, my parent, I just lived at home until I got married. I lived at home, and my sister is almost 5 years younger than I was, and so when my mother went back to work, she was in junior high, and I was probably in high school, and so my mother did go back to work, and my sister was the one that kind of prepared. Like my mother would show her, tell her what to do, and I didn't do anything. And then I remember, it's not funny, but I remember my mother would say, "Phyllis, I need you to, help in the kitchen, go and, help with dishes." And I would go, "This is the truth." I go, "Oh, I'm so tired." And my dad would go, "Oh, leave her alone, I'll do it." That was the truth. That was the truth. My sister is a good cook today. My sister could do all those things, but I'm not. I'll be honest. I could think God gave me 3 sons because I couldn't teach a girl anything. That's the truth. That is the truth.
People are going to crack up when they hear this.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah, I think people are going to enjoy you so much, Phyllis. So I know that you had a period in your life, because you showed me pictures of your trophies, that you were a dancer.
Yes.
When did that? Yeah, ballroom dancer. When did that start?
Oh, it started very young, and I was in. I used to take dance and tap lessons. You send your kids. Today they send them to sports and things.
Right.
But back then we did dance and ballet. And could you see me in ballet shoes? But I did, with the tutus, the whole thing. So I always wanted to be on the stage. So
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
But you excelled in it. You weren't just doing the lessons.
No, I know. Oh, no. And then the ballroom dancing, it was just part of our lives.
Yeah.
We all, we were always going to dances and, just dancing. So I did win a dance contest. I won a cha-cha contest in Florida.
In Florida. And
that's correct.
So
and I had a trophy. They only gave one trophy. And the guy I had won with, he wanted the trophy. But I said, but the girls get the trophy, not the guys.
You told him, "I'm the Jewish princess."
That's it. But so you know what? He went and got another trophy, so we both can have a trophy.
Did you ever tell him that his trophy's fake and you have the real one?
No, I didn't. But he probably knows that.
Yeah, deep down in his heart, he knows it's true. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you didn't stay in the Bronx, and frankly, you didn't stay Jewish, right?
Well, I always stay Jewish.
Well, you stayed Jewish.
I'm always Jewish.
But you're...
Can't change that, right?
No, you can't change that. You're right. But you became a Jew who believes in Jesus.
Amen.
Before that happened,
yes,
you met a young man. Tell us...
The love of my life.
Okay, so I'm sorry to cut you off, but I'm gonna imagine there's a handful of people who are immediately gonna know who that is.
Yes.
Would you just take a quick second, and why don't we just fast forward and let people who maybe are not aware, who was your husband?
My husband was Noel Weiss, and he was the founding pastor of this church.
Yeah. What year was that?
1984 we started.
Okay, 1984.
Yeah.
And he founded Zion Community Church, which is now Bridge
Zion
Community
Christian
Church.
Center at first.
Zion Christian Center.
Yes. You want to hear a little story about that name?
I do.
This is really a funny story. When we were getting ready to start the church, we had no idea, of course, how many people were going to come. Or we had just come from Melodyland, and several people, knew that we wanted to start the church. Anyway, we were thinking, well, what are we going to name the church? You have to come up with a name, right? And we were thinking of all different kinds of names. And I remember one day my husband said, "You know what, honey? How about, this is our Jewish background." My husband is Jewish too.
Right.
He's Jewish too. And he'd say, "How about Shekinah Christian Center?" And I'd go, "Shekinah?" I said, "I don't even know how to spell that." I said, "How could people find us? They can't spell it either. Nobody could spell that." And it was so funny because that was the first thing. It's Shekinah, the Shekinah glory of God, right? It made sense. No, I can't spell that. And if I can't spell it, maybe other people can't, and they'll never find us. And so we would, a few days of whatever went by, and this is the truth. This is exactly how it happened. He was in the shaving, and I was fixing our bed. It was in the morning, and I was just getting ready to say to him, "How about Zion Christian Center?" I didn't get the words out yet. And he turns around and said, "Honey, how about Zion Christian Center?" And that's how we got the name.
Wow. It's interesting because the name of a church is a big deal.
That's right.
It's so cool that God works while he's shaving and you're making the bed, and that's how you name the church. So let it be known from now on. That's the true story.
That's a true story.
Okay, so let's rewind all the way back. How did you meet Noel?
Okay. We were raised in the same neighborhood in the Bronx.
Okay.
We went to different elementary schools because, they had districts there, probably just like they do here, too. And they had districts. So I was on one side of the Grand Concourse, and they were on the other. So he was in another group that went to one elementary. And some of my friends that became my friends later in junior high went to that same school. So a lot of my friends knew him. And I remember I used to hear them talk. His nickname was Chick.
Okay.
They used to call him Chick and Chickie. When he was just a baby, his mother would go, "Oh, my little Chickie, my little," and it stuck. So a lot of the people from our past only call him Chickie. The family calls him Chickie. So it's funny. Yeah,
That's hilarious.
it is. That's his nickname.
Especially when he grows into a grown man who pastors
So
a
it's
successful church.
And that's when we were in mission work for a while. We'll get back to that.
Yeah.
So, it was still Chickie, so everybody knew him as Chickie. But when we came to Melody Land, he said, "You know what, Chickie? I'm going to start using my real name, Noel Weiss." And that's so. But you know how even with his, I have to tell you, this is a cute story.
Okay.
With his name, because he was raised as a kid, Chickie. That's your name.
Yeah.
And so when he started school, his mother said to him, "You know what? Your real name is Noel. So when they call you in class, your name is Noel." So that's how he knew that. Because nobody called him Noel. Then, so for years though, but everyone else called him Chick at home, and his friends. Well, when he went into the Army, he was filling out papers, for legal name, Noel Weiss, Noel Donald Weiss, and and Noel D. Weiss, and some just Noel Weiss. And they said to him, the officials there, you write different names. What is your real legal name? Do you know he didn't even know it? Because he didn't have a middle name. And he wanted a middle name because his sister had a middle name. So his mother, when he was a kid, said, "Okay, your middle name is Donald." And that's what so he didn't even know his real name for all those years until he got into the Army. He called his mother, "What is my real name?"
Oh my gosh.
Donald was not part of it.
Donald was not part of it.
No, it was just Noel Weiss. Yes.
So how old? He was 18 years old?
When he went into the service, right after, yeah.
At 18, so first he goes into like kindergarten, first grade, and he has to be told your name is not Chickie.
It's Noel.
It's Noel. Right. And then when he's 18, he has to be told you actually don't have a middle name.
That's correct. That's correct. And he was a very intelligent man.
Yeah. So you kind of heard of him. When was the first time you can remember meeting Noel?
Oh, I just very clearly remember that day.
Then tell me that.
Yes. Because, like I said, I've heard his name because everyone always talked about Chickie, so good looking, and he was in the service because he had started after high school. He started Hunter College in New York, and he just went a semester, and he really didn't know he was a musician.
Okay,
my husband played trumpet. And he really didn't know what he was going to be doing, so he decided he's going to leave college for a while, go into the Army, because in those years, a lot of his friends would just join him. It was peacetime, wasn't during any war.
Right.
It was between Korea and Vietnam. And so he decided that he's going to just go into the service as well. And he went into the Army, so he was like away pretty much for 2 years. And so I hadn't met him yet. I didn't know even.
You hadn't met him?
No, all growing up years, I didn't meet him.
Okay.
And but one of my very close friends' family was very close with his family for years. They would belong to the same kind of a club, and so she knew him pretty well. And anyway, but like I said, I've heard of him for years and years. His name. I didn't even know what he looked like. It's a hard name
to forget.
But I didn't even know what he looked like.
Okay.
So. He had just gotten out of service, and I didn't even know, like I said. His mother worked in a women's store right in the area. With anyone that knows the Bronx, Burnside Avenue, they would know Burnside Avenue. And I was walking with my friend up the street, and he was standing outside. He had just gotten out of the service. It was just recent. And he was standing out in front of the store where she was working. He had gone in to visit her. And so we started, my friend introduced me, and I was dating one of his friends who was overseas in the Army. And so she introduced me to him, and I remember saying to her, you know what? You ought to let him take you home. He's really cute. Maybe he'll ask you out. You know? So, and she said, well, I've known him since I'm a kid, you know. And we just had conversation. And in the Bronx, and back in those years, I think probably all over Brooklyn, in all those boroughs, you had groups of people. They weren't gangs. They were just friends. We'd meet on the corner by the candy store.
Yeah.
So there were guys and girls, and so everybody was acquainted with each other.
Yeah.
And so we would get to come, and he would be becoming part of that group, and I was part of that group. And we would just, and a few times he would say to me, oh, why don't you come with me? He was just being nice, you know. He knew I was dating this friend of his and practically engaged almost. But
Wow, I had no idea.
yeah, it was not official, but you know, we thought we were together. We were going to be together. And but he was just being nice because he knew my boyfriend was overseas, and so different occasions, and he was playing trumpet at different things, and he would say, "Why don't you come with me for this, or come with me?" And we just became friends, you know. And I remember one day I knew this is serious. Like this, I don't know what to do. How could I just tell this other guy that I'm just really seeing him, you know? And but anyway, so it just happened, and I said, "Oh, I just can't break it off." How do you? Back then, you called them the Dear John letters.
Oh yeah.
People would know that, and I said, "Oh no, I can't do that." So I would just come home every day, and I just still write to my old boyfriend and tell him, you know, that yes, I still love you, and I thought, what a phony I probably was back then. I wasn't a Christian yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No. So, but anyway, and I thought, well, I just can't write him a letter. So what will I do? So he'll come home, and we'll just be together. You know?
Yeah.
That's how you just think. You know, I was at that time. I was almost 20. When I met Noel, I was 19.
Okay.
So that's when we were young, you know, and just having fun in life, you know, because like I said, life was so different. You weren't afraid. You weren't afraid to leave the house. It just was different living in our apartments. Everybody knew everybody, you know, in the apartment buildings. And so, when this young man came home from service, we just didn't connect anymore, you know, and so we just kind of ended it. And then, of course, Noel and I started seeing each other. But he was so involved in his music. That's all he could think about was his music. And that was his love. And so he wasn't really interested in a serious relationship. Mm-hmm. And, of course, I fell crazy in love with him. I mean, I was crazy in love with him. I used to stand on the subway, the L in the Bronx, and I would wait till I knew he was going to be going to school. So I would wait and let trains go by, so I could see him if he came up. I was terrible. I ran after him till he caught me.
Oh, that's nice. When I grew up, my mom called that smitten.
Smitten.
Yeah.
I was smitten. That was the word. I was smitten.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so you're like 19 or 20.
I was 19 when I met him. Mm-hmm.
So you, he had to make a choice. He was a grown man, but you kind of forced his hand into noticing and.
Oh no! Well, we would see each other a lot.
Yeah.
But it was never like we were boyfriend and girlfriend. It was never that at all.
Okay, so finally, at some point, it became that.
Yeah. Well, this is how it happened.
Okay.
This is a story. We could go on. You could just tell me when we're done.
We have all the time in the world. That's the whole deal with the podcast.
Oh.
Yeah.
So anyway, we were seeing each other on and off, and you know, I would know if he would see somebody else, it would like rip my heart. But you know, just we were never committed. He would, you know, because like I said, his life was his trumpet, and he finished school. He went back to school when he got out of the service, and it's a Manhattan School of Music. Mm-hmm. It's on the same par as Juilliard.
Yeah,
it's very famous for people in the music world and the arts. And so he went back to school and still was playing, and then he would just do side jobs, other things, just to make some money. And like I said, we would just see each other, go here or there together, and we were just part of our group.
Yeah.
But I mean, like I said, I was crazy in love with him. So, but I knew he wasn't committed to anything. Well, in the winter of 1959, it probably was about January or February of 1959, he caught a very bad flu. And he remembered he had an uncle in California, and this uncle had become a Christian. And of course, the family didn't know anything. What Christian? He's a Christian? You know, with Jewish people, he's a Christian, and he was in mission work, and so he was like kind of ostracized from the family. He had gotten out of the service, the uncle, years before, and met this woman who was a backslidden Christian, and led him to Christ as a Jew. It's just bizarre. My family's bizarre, and so he would write home to the family all the time about Jesus being the Jewish Messiah, and they just thought, oh, he's got rocks in his head. What Uncle Kenny? What? And he was a singer originally too,
Okay.
so he was in.
He had the musical.
He had the musical ability, but he would write home and tell the family. Anyway, one day my mother-in-law, his mom, not my boyfriend's mom, decided, you know what, I'm going to go out and see this brother in California. You know, and it wasn't like it is today. You just hop on a plane and go to California. It was a big deal to travel from the East Coast to the West Coast.
Yeah.
And so she took my sister-in-law with her daughter.
Yeah.
And they were going to go straighten Uncle Kenny out.
And where is he at in
It's
California?
in Santa Monica.
Okay, so
He was in a mission work. They did missionary work in Santa Monica. They were the only mission in all of Southern California that's housed underprivileged families with children.
Okay.
That was it was a big deal. But the purpose, of course, was to get the gospel to the people.
Right.
And so they decided to come to California, and they were going to straighten Uncle Kenny out. And what is this Jesus in your life? Anyway, but when they got here, of course, he started to share with them about Jesus being the Jewish Messiah. And, first they didn't, okay, Kenny, if this is what makes you happy, you do it, but this is not for us.
Yeah.
And they went back to New York, and my mother-in-law had a dream and actually saw Jesus.
Wow.
My mother-in-law, actually, Jesus appeared to her, not in a dream, but appeared to her.
Wow.
And so,
Did that freak her out?
No, because she knew all the things her brother had told her.
Okay.
And now here it was, Jesus was standing in front of her, and she accepted Jesus at that time. But she didn't go to church. She didn't know anything, but she just knew that this experience happened to her.
Yeah.
And then she said one time she saw her hands in a vision, like her hands, and she looked at her hands and she heard a voice say her daughter had big warts on her knees. He said, just put your hands on her warts, and they'll go away. And she knew nothing, and she never went to church, didn't read the Word. As Jews, we didn't read the Bible. We just knew Jewish stories,
Okay.
So she put her hands on her sister's, her daughter's knee, and the warts were gone.
Wow.
I mean, the warts were gone. So she, in her heart, knew that Jesus was real.
Yeah.
She knew that. And of course, she tried to tell, her husband, and this was right when my husband was going, playing trumpet and just living in the world, So when she would try to tell him about Jesus, and he would say, Mom, if this makes you happy, and you do it too, but if this is not for me, leave me alone.
Yeah.
Okay? So one Sunday, she was watching, because they didn't go to church. You're Jewish. You didn't go to church. I mean, how do you tell people that you're a Christian?
Were there churches in your neighborhood?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we had a church on the corner of my house, on Concourse, right there next to our apartment building, and one across the street. It was hysterical.
But still, your mom never thought to just go into it.
Oh, no, my mother-in-law.
Oh, your mother-in-law, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, but where she lived, there was no churches over there.
Okay.
But still, it was close enough. But you just didn't think, we're Jewish, we can't go to church, So, but she just knew she believed in Jesus.
Yeah.
And for her, that was enough for salvation.
Now, what kind of, so you're saying there's clearly pushback, like she went to go straighten Uncle Kenny out.
Yes.
What kind of pushback would she have had in her own home? She said out loud, you know what, I think Jesus is the Jewish Messiah.
Probably disown you.
Okay.
Probably disown you.
So she more or less, believed in Jesus. She had these experiences, but she pretty much kept it to herself.
Her husband, she told my father-in-law, And of course, my sister-in-law was aware of everything then at that point, and seeing the healing on her leg. So she believed, but when she was trying to get but she didn't tell her sisters or anybody. You know, that's how it was. You just don't. It was something you couldn't speak about. That you were Jewish, and this was who you are. You know, you betray us. You can't do that. So she used to watch Oral Roberts in those years. He had the big 10 Crusades on TV.
Yeah.
And, you know, they had these little screens, you know, with TV. And my husband had gone downstairs. They lived on a 6th-floor apartment building, so they were on the top floor. And he was going downstairs to go out that day, and Oral Roberts was on, and he forgot his handkerchief. It was big in those years. He had to have a handkerchief in his back pocket.
Okay.
So he went back up the stairs to get his handkerchief. And she said to her, you know what, Chick, they called him Chickie, just sit down, look, Oral Roberts is here. You just watch him for a few minutes. So he thought, if I don't watch it, she's never going to get out of my hair. So I'm going to just sit down and watch it.
Yeah.
And he said, when he was sitting there watching this little TV screen with Oral Roberts on it, he said, all of a sudden, the room in the apartment building, right, was a white cloud just covered the whole room, and all he could see was the picture with Oral Roberts on it. He didn't see anything anywhere. And he just sat and just watched. But he didn't accept Jesus at that time. But he remembered that experience. It was a very weird, odd experience for him.
Yeah.
But he never said anything. He just went on. Well, that winter, as I said, he developed a very bad cold in New York. And so he's decided, you know what? Just to get better, I think I'm going to take a leave of absence. He had another year left at Manhattan School of Music to get his degree. And he said, you know what? I think I'm going to go and see my uncle in California. I just want to see him and talk to him. Because, you know, he remembered that experience.
Right.
You know, even though he never probably shared it with anybody, I would think, at that time. And so he said, I'm going to just take a leave of absence and go. And so he made plans, and that was February of 1959, in February. And of course, when he told me that he was leaving for California, I honestly thought my life was going to be over. What if he stayed there? I'll never see him again.
Mm.
And it was really a horrible goodbye for me. I remember I was almost like out of my mind and crying, and it was really terrible. And he said, Phyllis, it sounds funny now, but it wasn't at that time. He said, Phyllis, if it's meant to be with us, it will be. And if it's not meant to be, it's better 3,000 miles away. And he said, if I miss you, I'll write. How was that for good news after 3 years of seeing him? If I miss you, I'll write. Okay. So we said our goodbyes, and of course, I ran looking for mail all the time.
Yeah.
And finally gets a letter, and just a real sweet, nice letter. And after a couple months, he called. It was in June, and I was ready to go on a vacation with a friend of ours. We were going to go down to Mexico for a 2-week vacation. And all of a sudden, I get a phone call from him, and he said to me, I know that you're going down to Mexico for a vacation, but I want you to come to California instead. And I thought, oh my gosh, California, how can I come to California? We're ready to go to Mexico. You know, how could I do this to my friends? And I mean, it was his friends too, that, you know, and so he said, no, it's okay. Just call me and tell me what your flight you're coming in on. And he hangs the phone up. And I thought, oh my gosh, I got to go to California. I just got, you know.
This is your big chance.
Well, and I was 21, so I mean, I didn't need like real permission from, you know. And so I called my friend, and I said, how would you like to go to California instead of Mexico? She said, California? She was married to one of Noel's best friends. And they were divorced after 3 months, so it was a real quick thing, and he was living in California, too. She said, Phyllis, I have nothing in California but an ex-husband that I don't want to see. And she said, so if you want to go, I hope he dumps you when you get there. Those were her words. You know, we didn't talk for years. For years, we didn't talk.
Wow.
After that. But I knew I had to go. See, I didn't know at that point that Noel had accepted Jesus.
Okay.
He called me. See, I didn't know that. I did know that he had an uncle in California
Yeah.
that was a missionary and a Christian.
So in your mind, did the word missionary, did that even make any sense?
No,
you didn't even know what that was.
It's like, you hear missionary, people in a jungle somewhere. I mean, we know those terms. Everything was foreign.
Yeah.
So, but it was a mission in the city of Santa Monica. So anyway, but we're going on long. Is this too long?
No, we have hours. We have however long we want to go, we get to go.
Oh my gosh.
That's the beauty of this.
This is my life. I'm 84 years old. We could go until next week.
You're going to be blown away how many people are going to listen to this whole thing too. Don't you worry.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Don't scare me like that. Anyway, so I made reservations to go to California because I told my parents and that I wanted. Then they knew how I felt about him, and so it was so hard to get a reservation back in those years because it wasn't like today.
Yeah, you don't jump on the internet.
I know. Well, I know, not that I go on the internet now, but you just couldn't make reservations, and I just knew I had to get there. To California, I had to get there to see him, and so I remember calling in airlines and said, I don't care if I take a train to a plane to a bus, but please, you got to get me this weekend to California. And so I made the reservation, and there I was on my way to California.
Had you ever been to California before?
Never, no.
So growing up in New York in the 50s.
40s and 50s.
40s and 50s. What is the vision of California and New York at that time?
Hollywood, trees.
Okay.
Of course, Hollywood. What do you think of? Right?
So this is an exciting trip, not just for Noel, but you're going to a place that's very different. And
absolutely,
okay.
Absolutely. But one thing I had done while he was gone, these few months, I bleached my very dark, well, it's not now, but I had very dark hair, blonde, while he was gone. I mean, blonde.
But you never told him.
Oh yeah, I did. I told him that I was blonde.
And what did he?
No, but he didn't know what to expect to see me. So anyway, so here I was. Now, you've got to remember my vision of California, right? The Hollywood scene.
Right.
So here I am getting off the plane. And in those years when you got off on the tarmac, they didn't have terminals like they do today. And so I remember sunglasses. I mean, I must have been a sight to see, and I get off the plane and coming down the ramp, and I just can't wait to see him, and with my blonde hair, and and he was waiting for me, and he picks me up, and it was wonderful just to see him, and he was driving his uncle's car,
okay,
and all I knew is that his uncle became a Christian and married to a Christian woman,
right? So
I didn't know anything about Christian. Like I said, Christian was nothing. It was just that you weren't Jewish and you were different from me.
Yeah.
So he said to me, Phyllis, he was working at a car dealership just to make some extra money while he was out here. He said, Phyllis, I have to go to work in L.A. He said, but my aunt and uncle are going to call you. He checked me into the hotel, and he said, they're going to call you and they're going to take you out to lunch because so you can have something to do while I'm at work. So I said, oh, that's nice. And after he left, by the way, the motel that I stayed at was in Culver City because that's where his aunt and uncle lived, and he was living with them at that time. He moved out of the apartment with his friends, and he was living with his aunt and uncle. And the hotel, there was a motel. It was right next door to a Foursquare church. He said the Holy Spirit was probably just coming in to the room there.
I'm envisioning it as you're telling the story. They should have made a movie. The Jewish princess touches down.
Yeah, and now I'm the queen. That.
I didn't. I know that you are now.
Now, yeah, because you graduate from princess to queen. At some point.
When we get to that part of the story, you let me know when it became princess to queen.
Oh my gosh! And so he left me, at the hotel, and I then I remembered. He told me about his aunt and uncle being Christians, and he was a minister, his uncle. And I thought to myself, I'm sitting by myself in the motel, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what will I say to him? What can I talk about to a minister? I didn't even ever talk to a rabbi, I don't know what kind of conversation. And we smoked, of course, back in those years, I smoked, and I thought, can I smoke in front of him? I mean, you don't know what to do. This was very strange to know I'm going to see a minister.
And I'd imagine there's the pressure of you want to impress Noel as well,
Absolutely.
or Chicky, yeah.
I impress his family.
Yeah.
Of course.
And so you're what, 21, 22 years
22.
old? Okay.
22.
Wow.
This was June, 1959, in June.
Okay.
So he'd been gone 4 months. And so he lives me with them, and they pick me up, and, they seem, normal talking. And so we visited and had lunch, and it was like, it was God the whole way. It was just God the whole way. Because he said to me, I said to him, so, Kenny, I don't understand something. How come you, a Jew that was in show business, you were a singer? I said, how did you become a Christian and a minister, Well, you don't need a bigger open door than that to have to tell somebody the story of Jesus, right?
Yeah.
And he started to share Jesus with me. And I said, I don't believe in the New Testament. I'm Jewish. And he said, no, I'm going to show you Jesus in the Old Testament. And I thought, Jesus, no, you're going to show me Jesus in the Old Testament.
Were you legitimately curious, or were you just trying to be polite to the uncle?
I think I was probably curious at that point, just as a conversation.
Yeah.
So, we went and he brought me back, and we just visited a little bit that way and just shared a little bit. And the next day, they picked me up again because it was fun. Noel had to work all these few days, and so it gave the opportunity for me to be with them. And they would tell me more about Jesus. They would start telling me that, I'll show you Jesus in the Old Testament. And I was like, I knew the Bible. I didn't know the Bible. We never read the Bible. I just knew stories, the Red Sea, Solomon, but they bring the boy, and whose child is it? Those are the stories you knew from, but not, Jesus was not part of that. And so I remember saying to them, Jesus in the Old Testament, I know better than that. I know he's not, because that's for us. The New Testament is for you, and the Old Testament is for us. And he started showing me scripture. Like he took me to Isaiah 7:14. Well, I didn't even know what Isaiah was. But it sounded Jewish, so it must have been Isaiah, right? must have been
taking
right.
his word for everything at that point.
Yeah, it must have been right. And it was born of a virgin. And I thought, we don't believe that. We don't believe you need a man and a woman to have a child. So, but he said, no, Phyllis, this is in the Bible you just told me you believed in. A virgin's going to conceive and bear a son. That's in the Bible, and that we're supposed to be reading. Yeah. Then he takes me to Micah, where he was born in Bethlehem. Well, we all knew that. When you grow all through your years, you grow up at Christmas singing "Oh, Little Town of Bethlehem."
Yeah.
So the scripture after scripture, that his hands and feet would be pierced. Well, everybody knows these things, and he's showing me that in the Old Testament.
Right.
Yeah. And so, oh my gosh! After a couple of days, scripture after scripture, and like I said, we never read the Bible, so it was like a surprise to me. And one of the days, it was a couple of days that he was working, Noel was working, and I was with them. And one of the, I believe God used this. It sounds crazy, and you might think it didn't really happen the right way, but his aunt said to me, "You know what, Phyllis? Noel just became a Christian. He just asked Jesus they called him Chicky. He just asked Jesus to come into his heart and accept Jesus as his Savior and Jewish Messiah." And then she said, and you know what he said? He said he thinks if you became a Christian, he thinks he'd marry you. That's all I had to hear. Now this really got exciting. And I want to know more about this.
So you got a glimpse of your golden ticket.
Yes, I did. Oh my gosh.
I had no idea. I didn't know this part of the story. So you have some conflicting motives to know more about Jesus at this point.
Absolutely. I confess it. It's the truth. I did. And I thought, oh my gosh, it's this important? He would marry me? He never said he loves me even. And so I remember that night going back to the motel. And I remember laying in the bed, and for the first time in my whole life, I really felt the presence of God, a consciousness that there's a God. I can't even explain it. It's probably never happened like that to me, but I was aware of something other than this world and this life. And so the next morning, I called this aunt and uncle. I said, "Could you come on over? I want to hear a little more about this Jesus." No, really, because I know God used that because I did have a motive.
Yeah.
And why wouldn't I? My goodness, the love of my life, and he said he'd marry me if I believed this stuff. And so they came over and they started to share, and right there at the bed in it was called Stearns Motel in Culver City, we knelt down and we prayed and asked Jesus to come into my heart. To be honest with you, Andy, I didn't know what I did. I didn't understand what I did, but for some reason I just felt that it was right. I don't even have the words because I don't even understand it myself. But I mean, I never lost that, even through the years before we even came into ministry. I never lost that. That's what I did, and accepted it. And so, they were so excited. They called Noel at work and said, Phyllis just accepted Jesus, And so, I mean, everybody's excited. I didn't even know what did I do? I did something big, everybody's so excited. And so the next day, God had this whole thing planned. It was just within a few days, right? The next day, Noel had off. And so we went into L.A. and he wanted to show me, around some of the sites and where he was living before. And I remember we had gone back to the apartment where he was staying with some friends before he moved in with his aunt and uncle. And this was only over 4 months now that he was gone. And they had a pool there at the apartment complex. And so we were both sitting at the pool. I was in the water. My hair was just dripping wet and everything. And he looks at me and he said to me, do you want to get married? Just like that. And so I said to him, yeah, you know somebody? So this was our proposal. I said, yeah, you know somebody? He said, yes, me, stupid. And I thought he was joking. I mean, you want to get married, He said, yeah, I'm serious. He said, why don't we just get married? And I thought, you're really serious? And he said, yeah, why don't let's go and to tell my aunt and uncle. I thought, he must be serious. He wants to tell his aunt and uncle. So we get to his aunt and uncle's house, and we tell them, and they said, you know what? Why don't you just get married here tomorrow? Get married here tomorrow. I mean, you had to get blood tests and all that stuff, so we couldn't get married the next day, but we could get married the day after because you got to get blood. It was an evening. We couldn't do anything that fast. And so here we are. We're running to get blood tests. Now you don't probably have to get blood tests, but back then you had to have blood tests. Got the results of blood tests, we went to the Santa Monica City Hall, got marriage license, and we got married. And at their house.
Okay, so in between, I do recall that you told me this story, but I've always had this question. So in between him asking you, yes, and you weren't sure if he was kidding at the pool, right, and you actually doing it, do you phone home at all?
No, because we decided, I was 21 and he was 22. I mean, I was 22 and he was 23.
Okay.
And so we said, we don't have to call and get permission. So why don't we just, because if we would call, they would say, why don't you come home and we'll have the wedding here, then you can finish school. He had a year left of Manhattan School of Music. So we thought, why go through all that? Let's go ahead and just get married. So we got married in his house, at his aunt and uncle's house.
So you got married. What was the conversation like when you told your parents?
Okay, so the next day, we couldn't stand it anymore. We thought we would just come home and then tell them. We weren't going to tell them. and so we said, we can't stand it. We got to call them and tell them we got married. So we called them up. And we said, are you sitting? Both parents were with them.
Uh-oh.
Are you sitting down? What's going on? Because when I left to go to see him, my parents knew about his aunt and uncle being Christians. And they knew about the mission and all that. So they were concerned, about...
Even your mom was concerned?
Everybody was concerned. My mother, my father. But, they weren't real aware of what was going on.
Sure.
So I said... so we called them. We told them we had just gotten married. And that we were going to be coming home the following week because he was going to go back to school and finish his degree, and then we're going to come home. And so and they were excited, and they were happy for us, really, they were. And so we flew home the next week.
I'm sorry to cut you off. Did you tell them that you were also a Christian?
No. Oh, no.
Okay.
And so, and we married in a Christian ceremony. His uncle married us as Christians, Christians.
Were you nervous? Were you terrified? Were you like, what was your feeling about it?
You know what? I think I was in such awe of becoming his wife. that everything just fell in and it was just okay. Everything was okay. But we knew we weren't going to talk about Jesus to my family because his family already knew his father and his.
Oh, his parents already knew that he had become a Christian.
Well, his mother, of course, because she accepted the Lord, and his dad, of course, knew all that because she had shared with the dad. And so we decided to fly home. Well, in the meantime, in this week, my parents and his parents decided they're having a Jewish wedding for us without telling us.
So you're going to get married without telling us. We're going to throw you another wedding without telling you.
Without telling you. So,
but they're moving forward with plans, not knowing that you're a Christian.
Correct, and they wanted to get us to get. In their mind, they probably got the impression that it was a civil ceremony.
Okay.
I'm sure that's what they were thinking. They had no clue about a Christian ceremony. They didn't know about my life then. So we get off the plane, and they said, "Okay, guys, you surprised us. Now we're surprising you. We have a wedding tomorrow night with the rabbi." And I thought, oh my gosh, this is great. We're going to have a big wedding now. So we had a big wedding. The next night we had a big wedding. And a rabbi married us. And my husband would say, "Phyllis, I married you twice. I'm not marrying you again." So we had this big Jewish wedding. And nothing was said. The rabbi didn't know that we got married in a Christian. He just knew that we got married in California. Now we wanted a Jewish ceremony.
Yeah.
That was our thing. And I remember one time I was with my aunts and my mom. It's probably several months later, and because we never talked about our Christianity to them. How could you tell them that they were Christians? They didn't want to hear about that. And so I remember whatever the conversation was, because it was never a religious conversation that we would ever have. We were Jewish, and that's what we were. So, but I don't even remember, it was so long ago, what the conversation was. It was all sitting at the table with my mom and my aunts, my mom's sisters, and we were talking, and from something I must have said, they said, "Phyllis, do you believe in this Jesus?" And I remember sitting there, and one thing his uncle had told us, the Bible says, if you deny me, I'll deny you. It's funny, just little kind of the nuggets that they shared with us, and that
it lingered with you.
Lingered with me. And I just sat there and I thought, oh my gosh, I can't say no. And I said, yes, I do. Well, my mother said, don't you ever talk like this again. Don't ever mention this again to anybody. And that was the end of it. We never talked about it. But my husband was telling everybody about Jesus, his friends. He was just so excited. Jesus is a Jewish Messiah.
It was just so real and so tangible to him. He had no choice. He just felt like he had to do that.
Everybody.
So I want to hear more about, because I know you go back to Santa Monica, right?
Yeah.
But before that,
that was 2 years later.
Okay. Yeah. I'm just curious, as your life continued, did you keep in contact with your parents pretty closely?
Oh, after we got married?
Yeah, as they aged. Did
Oh, absolutely. Well, when we stayed in New York for 2 years.
Right.
And he finished his school. He got his degree in music. And that was what we thought our life would be. New York, he's going to, get into local 802, the music in the field. And that was what he was going to do.
Yeah.
And I was working. I had a good job. I was a medical secretary. So, that was our life. And we never thought of going to church, because like I said, that's not our life. Church was not our life. But we did know that we were Christians. And like I said, he told everybody about Jesus being the Jewish Messiah.
It's so foreign to me to think of a situation where somebody would come to know Jesus in 2021,
yes,
be so on fire for Jesus and literally not attend church at all.
Yeah, well, because back then it wasn't our way of living.
Yeah,
it wasn't like today. Today, when we first gave our lives to Jesus, there were hardly ever met anybody that was Jewish, that was a Christian. I mean, people, when we came out here, people would call him all the time to come and share his testimony, because there weren't many Jews that received Jesus. Now you could go anywhere in any church, in any group of Christians, and find Jewish believers.
Yeah.
It wasn't that way back then.
So tell me how, because my understanding of the story from spending time and talking with you is, so you don't stay in New York, you end up going back.
After 2 years, we were in New York for 2 years. And like I said, he finished his degree there. And he had taken a job, because he was taking just little odd jobs while he was going to school. But he had taken, and he was playing, on and off here at different groups, just like bar mitzvahs, weddings, and making some extra money doing that. But he had gotten an offer up in the Catskill Mountains in New York. It was a big thing in the summertime. Everyone went to the Catskill Mountains. So they had the big hotels there had
Like summer camps and all kinds of stuff.
Well, big hotels. It was a big deal. And so he got a job up there playing in a band, as a trumpet player for the summer. So I was staying here, I was working, not here, I mean working in New York. I was staying at home, and he was up in the Catskills playing trumpet. And he called me when he just was up there about a week or something, and they were rehearsing. And we rehearsed, and he called me that night, and he said, "Phyllis, I want to tell you what just happened. We were rehearsing the show, and all of a sudden," he said, "I lost the embouchure, which is in your lip when you're a trumpet player or any horn, and it just collapsed. I couldn't play a note. It was just gone." He said, and I feel such a peace. I mean, that's just a career.
So he didn't feel like a sense of devastation. There was something
He said,
peaceful
all of a
about
sudden,
it.
a peace came over me. And he said, all the guys in the band, they were like, "No, what are you going to shake? What are you going to do? My goodness, He said, "No, it's going to be okay." But the show he was playing, it was really a very ungodly show. It was female impersonators and one male impersonator. And they said, what are you going to do? You lost your lip. What? He said, it's going to be okay. And I was a wreck when he called and told me what happened. And I remember it was raining, and he was going to drive home from the Catskills that night. And I said, "Please don't drive home tonight. It's raining. It's so hot." I'm thinking he's got to be depressed out of his head. His whole career just right in front of him. And he said, "No, Phyllis, I'm fine. I have a peace. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay." And I'm freaking out. It's typical Jewish nervous lady. So he came home, and he was peaceful. He was peaceful. He said, God knows. God had him from the very beginning when he just did.
I think those are the moments where you can accept Jesus and you can follow Jesus. But those are the moments where you get a glimpse into what Jesus has done in people.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
He really had that experience. I believed in Jesus, but he didn't have my whole being yet. I still was holding on to, I'll hold on to this world, but I do believe Jesus is our Jewish Messiah.
Yeah.
That's probably where I was at in those years.
Okay.
And so he came home, and he just thought, what are we going to do? What should we do? And we started to think about it, because he had already graduated, and he said, "You know what? He had a great aunt and uncle in California here that were very famous people. They were Mama and Papa Weiss. They owned a Hungarian restaurant in Beverly Hills.
Okay.
They were very well known. A lot of the celebrities went to their restaurant, and she was Mama Weiss and had a cooking show.
Oh, wow.
TV. And so they were famous people, and they had this big factory where they produced all this stuff. So we said, "You know what? Why don't we, go back to California?" We were happy, and we can call up Mom and Papa Weiss, because we had seen them when we were there. And as a matter of fact, they wanted us to get married. They wanted us to have a wedding there at their house. When they heard we were going to get married, we went and told them that day. And so my father-in-law said, because it was his relatives, he said, "Yeah, we're going to, I'll call them and tell them, do you want to go out and see if they have," because they had this big, business and the rest of everything. And they were, like I said, they were very successful. And so he called them up, and he said to my father-in-law, "Oh my gosh, have the kids come out. We'll take care of them. Have them come out." So here we go. We're going to sell everything we had, which was not very much in the years. One little studio apartment we lived, and we're going to go. And I was going to be another Mama Weiss, So that's what we had in our head. We're going to work for the Weisses.
Yeah.
And, so we sell everything, and we come out here, and we call them up, and we go to see them, and they said to Noel, "Did you get yourself a job yet?" He said, what? So they said, well, business took a turn, and, we really can't put anybody on right now. And we thought, oh, my gosh, what do we do? But Noel was always peaceful.
Yeah.
And he said, you know what, Phyllis? He was looking for other work. And my husband was a very good-looking man, very well-dressed, very well-educated. Spoke. My husband could not get a job. No matter what he applied for, he could not get a job. And I used to say, honey, you're not trying hard enough. Because I got a job right away as a medical secretary here in L.A. And he said, you know what? I think God wants me to go into the ministry. And I thought, God wants you to go into the ministry. I'm a Christian. That's one thing. I believe in Jesus. But ministry? This is not what we talked about. So he said, I really do believe that God wants me to tell my uncle to go on and go in. Because we had started going to the mission church Sundays when we lived in Beverly Hills. Because when we moved out, we moved to Beverly Hills. We got a place in Beverly Hills. Got to live in Beverly Hills. We also came out in a big convertible, blue convertible, because you don't have to have a convertible when you come to California.
The princess enters California, she's got to have style.
Big blue convertible. It was so typical of what our life was in New York that you just bring it with you. And now, what do you do when you're in California? You just live like that. Only I didn't have blonde hair anymore.
Okay. You went back to the natural.
It was too much work to have blonde hair. So I said, honey, God's not calling you into the ministry. You're just not trying hard enough to get a job. Like I was so spiritual, like I knew what God wanted. And his uncle had said to him, you know what, Chicky, when you were just a young man, God spoke to me that someday he's going to work with you. And so that was like a confirmation to him. And so he said to me one day, he said, you know what, Phyllis, I love you very much, but you could take everything we have here, whatever we have, and you could go back home to your parents, but I am going to serve God with or without you. That was a big step for him to have to take.
Wow.
And because he knew in his heart that God was calling him. And we were young Christians. We didn't know anything. Like I said, we'd watch Oral Roberts on Sunday morning like my mother-in-law used to do.
Yeah.
We'd put our cigarettes out, because we can't smoke in front of Oral Roberts. And so... by the way, we stopped smoking. That was part of it.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm glad. Yeah, I was going to ask you, are you still smoking there, Phyllis?
Yeah. Little drinks here and there, but anyway. So, but this is a long story, isn't it? You're going to get tired of hearing.
No, I'm not tired of it at all.
Sure.
I'm very interested in it, actually.
We're good buddies now. I know, aren't we? We have been since he came here. He's been like my grandson. Believe me, I told you.
My most vivid memory of you is you yelling into my pregnant wife's stomach, saying, "You will recognize this voice."
That's right.
And he does.
He does, yeah. His beautiful little boy, Colton. And so he said, and I knew I was never going to leave him. I mean, I just loved him. It was so.
You were still smitten.
I was smitten. And, but I remember when we left New York, this time to drive, and we said goodbye to my parents. Because my mother then, of course, knew what I had told her, that I do believe in Jesus. She knew about the mission and his aunt and uncle. And the words my parents said as we were leaving to me, don't go to that mission. So that was in my head. Oh, my gosh. Now I got to tell my mother, my husband wants to work at the mission. It was more than I could handle. And so, we decided, he couldn't get a job. And he said, Phyllis, I really believe this is what God wants me to do.
Yeah.
So I said, honey, if that's what you want to do it, And so he told his uncle, and of course his uncle and aunt were just thrilled, that he was going to work with him.
So were the uncle and the aunt, they were running the mission?
Yes, they founded it and running. I said,
okay, so they weren't just working there; it was theirs.
They had
planted
a building. We had a building in Santa Monica, right on 14th Street, between Olympic and Pico. Right, I don't know if you're familiar with that area down there, but it's in Santa Monica, and so they had a beautiful building, where they housed underprivileged families with children. The only place that took families with children. And they, of course, the big thing was to get the gospel to them. So they had services several times a week. That was just the life there. And we lived in our own little apartment. And I thought, oh my goodness, how am I going to? I have to tell my parents, that we're going to be in the mission, working in the mission. What can I do? I had my job, but so when I told them, oh my gosh, I get a call from my aunt, and she said, Phyllis, you don't know what you're doing to your family. Your sister's going to have a baby, and you're never going to see that baby. Your mother fainted in the subway, and they had to take her to the emergency. You better come home. You don't know what you're doing. And and to be torn. I mean, the enemy was just fine. And I was such a new Christian. I didn't know anything. And but I knew I wasn't going to leave my husband too. I just knew that.
Yeah.
And I knew he had to do what he was in his heart. He had to do what God told him to do. And so I remember we were at this little mission, and we used to have the altar calls at the mission. And we were only there several months at that time. It wasn't like long. And we were in this apartment, and I remember that day, that night at the service in the mission. It was just a little mission, where the people that were living there had to go, and we had a few people that came as church people. And I remember sitting in that pew, and I'm thinking, I couldn't between the pressure of my family and my love for my husband. I was so distraught, and I thought to myself, I'm just never going to come back here again to the service church. I just can't do this. I can't handle this. I can't do this. And so I didn't want to say anything to anybody because, I didn't want to make a scene. And so at the end of the service, everybody goes forward and they walk back, the old Pentecostal days. And we, not that I'm putting that down. Don't misunderstand me.
Okay. No, nobody's going to perceive that.
So I went forward, and I thought, this is it. Nobody has to know, but I'm never coming back. I'm telling this to God. I'm never coming back. And while I was down at the altar, there was two ladies that came over to me. They didn't know anything, and they started praying for me, not knowing what was going on in my heart. And when I got up from that altar, something changed in me. I knew, you know what? I am going to stay here and serve God with my husband. This is what God's caused us to do. And so we stayed, and a few weeks later, because I hadn't heard from my parents, my mother and dad, they called and they said, Phyllis, you're still our daughter, and we love you, and if this makes you happy, you want to do this, you do it, but just don't, tell us about it. So, and then we started serving the Lord in the mission, and then I had 3 sons while we were in the mission. There was. I had one son, then I had another son 20 months later, and then 2 days less than 11 months later, I had my 3rd son.
Wow.
So 31 months, I had 3 babies. And the position came available, because we were living in this little apartment.
Yeah.
The position came available in the mission to actually be in the mission, and you run the whole thing and live there in the mission.
So it was taking over from Noel.
No, they were in charge. They were the pastors and founders and all. But they lived in a house. They had their own house. But they needed somebody that would oversee inside and be there,
See, okay.
to run inside.
So you're going to move out of the studio and into the mission.
Yeah, our little apartment by then we had moved to Culver City.
Okay.
We graduated from Beverly Hills because we couldn't afford that anymore. The mission, we couldn't afford Beverly Hills. And so we were living in this, and I had these 3 little babies. And I remember Noel said, you know what, Phyllis, I think we're supposed to take that job in the mission. I say, all I had was the fear of what will my parents say if I tell them now we're moving in the mission. I feared God. I feared my family more than I feared God. That was the bottom line. We fear people more than God, and I didn't know. And I thought, oh my gosh, I move into the mission. We've got 3 babies here, And he said, I really think that's what we're supposed to do, take that job. And so anyway, one day I'm praying, and I remembered a story someone had told about a missionary that had been a missionary for many, many years overseas, in the jungle areas, and he was an elderly man now, and he was back home from the mission field. And hadn't been in the mission field for quite a few years. And the story was that he said God spoke to him and said, "I want you to go back to the mission field." And he said, "God, I'm old now. I've served many years on the mission field. I can't do this again. I'm too old." And he said, "But I want you to go." And he said he would argue back and forth with God. And I remember the story that somebody told. And finally he said, you know what, I just gave up. And I said, okay, God, I'll go. And I'll go back to the mission field. And then the Lord said to him, now I don't want you to go. I just wanted you to be willing. So I thought, okay, God, I'll go live in the mission.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so,
I hope this formula works for me.
yeah, okay, I'll do it, God.
Then were you checking your watch, like when is God going to call and say, just kidding, you don't have to go?
Right, God, I'll go. If you want me to go, I'll go. And of course, God wanted us to go.
Yeah.
So we moved into the mission, and we stayed there for 10 years in the mission, living there.
Yeah.
And it was very difficult. You know, well, I think we actually lived there 7 years. My boys were growing up, and it was so difficult because we worked day and night. My husband would go door to door. That was his job. He would go door to door, telling people about the mission and to raise funds for the mission. And I was pretty much running the mission. You know, people in and out all day long, and some people that are angry that they have to come to church service, and you couldn't stay there if you didn't attend the service. You had to come and stay, and we gave them 3 meals a day. You know, so it was a very trying time for me.
Yeah,
it really was a very trying time for me, with raising 3 babies, and I mean. And then my husband started reading a lot, you know, and he studied and he searched, and he was saying, you know, because it was very legalistic, you know, you can't do this, you can't do that. Everything was almost sin, you know. And he started reading about the grace of God and the mercy of God, and says, you know, this is not. Things that shouldn't have to be this way.
Yeah.
And so the more they would say, no. His aunt would say to me, don't let Noel read that stuff. Don't let him. He doesn't need to read all that stuff, you know. And because he was, you know, making suggestions and saying, this should be this way. And anyway, it came a day that we were going on a little trip with them, the parents, his aunt and uncle.
Yeah.
We were going to go to New York. Now, his aunt had never been there with these people, and this was my whole life, my family, and everybody was back there. And we were going to make a trip to New York with them with my 3 babies. My youngest one was like 8 weeks old.
Oh, my.
So I had three babies. And when we got there, it took us a long drive, and that's a very long story, but when we got there, they didn't want to. His aunt didn't want to stay in anymore. She said she didn't feel good, and we would have to leave and go home. And my parents had planned a big get together with family and friends to come see us. And she said, "No, we have to leave now, and God won't be happy if you don't go with us." You know, and there's a fear of that kind of a life. You know, that you have to do what your elders tell you. And so we left to go home, driving back to California after several days. And I had a nervous breakdown in the car. I was almost losing it. My husband said he was holding on to the wheel of the car as we were driving, because I was actually losing it. And the enemy was telling him, just drive the car into the wall. Just drive it in and just end this whole thing. Because I was so bad. I was literally pulling the hair out of my head. It was horrible. I had 3 babies.
What was going through your head?
I don't know. It was just like maybe from having 3 babies in a row, my hormones, whatever. I just didn't know anymore what I wanted in my life, because I was so confused about this lifestyle, so legalistic, and what we saw other Christians' life, and it was not. All it was fear, and it was just, I don't know, and it just broke me. It just broke me, and we got back to the mission, and I was in terrible shape. And I remember they had set me up with what do you call it, counselors,
Okay.
Psychologists and everything, and I just wanted help. I just nothing helped me. It didn't help. And I remember one day, I had gone down to church because I was a mess. But the Lord spoke to my husband one night. I mean, he said I was literally a mess. I couldn't even hardly take care of my babies. And he said he was down in the chapel praying, And the Lord said, Psalm 20, was it 22? Psalm 29? It was funny, right now, just leave my mind. Anyway, Noel looked up the scripture while he was in the chapel, and the scripture said, be of good courage. Wait on the Lord, and I will strengthen thine heart. Wait on the Lord. He said when he got that word, it was like a word, a rhema from God. He knew I was going to be okay. And he comes upstairs from the mission to our we live in a little apartment up there, it's just one room after the other, 3 little rooms, a kitchen, an office, and a bedroom for the boys. It was so simple. And, but he said when he came up, I was still the same depressed, horrible situation. And so one day I had gone down because we had to go to the service at church, and I went down to the altar one day, and some people prayed for me. And with all the medical things that they tried to get to me, nothing worked. But like that, God lifted that cloud off of me, and I was fine.
So was that the end of the mission?
No, we stayed there a few years more.
Okay.
But then my husband was getting invited to different places to speak, as a Jew that knows the Lord.
The doors were kind of opening, and he was able to see there's other options.
Other options, yeah. And that's when he got a call from Melodyland.
Okay.
We were getting ready to leave the mission before that call even came. We got, because we just knew it was time for us to move on. We had no place to go. But one night we just both knew it's time, we've got to go. And 2 people came with scriptures, exact same scriptures from the Old Testament about leaving this place and going on. 2 separate, same night, 2 people came to the door. They said, no, we don't even understand what this is, what the scripture is. And we knew it's time to go. Well, they weren't happy because we knew we're going. With 3 kids, we had no place to go, no money.
Yeah.
Hardly any belongings. And we just knew it was going to be okay. God will take care of us. And we went and we called a friend, because of course the family, his aunt and uncle, were very unhappy with us that how could you just do this and leave? But we knew, because Noel was starting to go to Melodyland for the men's prayer, because he knew somebody that was invited him from Santa Monica to Anaheim. Every Thursday morning, he would get early in the morning and go down to the men's prayer. And so he knew God was doing something in his life. And so we decided, and we just left that night. We called some people that we knew in Santa Monica and said, can we put some of our stuff at your garage, because we're leaving the mission. And they said, you're leaving the mission? Where are you going? We said, we don't know, but God told us to leave. They said, what do you mean you don't know? Come to our house. Stay with us. So God opened the door that very night, and we stayed with our 3 kids. And it was just a wonderful time just being in there. And the kids were able to finish school year there. And that's when he got a call from he was teaching in a Bible study or something. There was some people there in the class, and said they knew we were looking for a place to stay.
Yeah.
The sun was coming, and they said, I know you're looking for a place to stay temporarily. We're going to Africa and on to England because he was a professor of African history, this man, and lived in Pacific Palisades. And he said, we can't rent our place. We need someone to stay in our home and just watch over our home free. Just move in for the summer. And you can just stay there free. Just watch over our house. So God opened the door, and we moved in there. And it was 3 houses down from Hal Lindsey, who had just become famous from reading the Great Planet Earth. And so, of course, Noel got to meet and visit with him. But anyway, so we moved in there, and then Noel gets a call from someone down at Melodyland about, are you interested in teaching for the summer, down here on a summer session? And Melodyland, I mean, that was the highlight here.
So let me pause you. What year are we talking about now?
We're talking 71.
Okay, so
71 and 72.
So Melodyland is this early, what we would probably call now like mega church. They have all the infrastructure. They got TV. They have concerts. They have everything going on.
Correct.
So you guys are well aware of who they are.
Correct.
And in his mind, this is a big deal.
We're missionaries. Come from a little mission in Santa Monica.
So in that time, did you kind of internalize that that's like the big leagues, that's the big show, and we're just small town little?
Oh, absolutely.
So what was the response like when he told you that?
Well,
hey,
first he said they just called me. I don't know. I mean, I told him I'd get back to them. I said, "You're gonna get back to them. Call them and tell them you'll do it."
you mean you gotta get back to them? You gotta go.
Yeah, we got to do this. And so we did, and and God provided for us. It was just amazing. We were able to rent a place in Anaheim, right near Disneyland, and because Melody Land was close by, and he taught there, and then Ralph Wilkerson said to him, would you like to join the staff? We'd love to have you on staff. We need people, pastors here that will do hospital visitations and stuff like that. And from that point, it was history at Melody Land.
He must have been a natural at that. When you're working at a small mission and you're doing absolutely everything door to door, and those...
And people loved him.
Yeah.
He met people that to this day, I mean, before he died, they were still in touch with him. Because he just made such wonderful friends.
So how long did he work at Melody Land for?
10.5 years.
And you know what? I think that there's a contingent of folks who know that chunk of the story, but fill us in the 5-10 minute version of what kind of transpires and how Zion Christian Center becomes a thing. Yeah.
Okay. So after 10.5 years, things were changing over there, and we just knew we needed to move on. We knew a few people there that are still here at this church now today. That was wanting to move on and make a change. And Noel had gone across the country with another pastor that was from Melody Land too. They were just doing evangelistic work and just ministering across the country. And they were gone for a few weeks. And everywhere Noel went, the Lord spoke to him through these other pastors. He said, "Noel, you know what? God didn't call you to be an evangelist. He called you to be a pastor. You need to go back to California and shepherd those people that are hurting. They've left. They're all over the place. They need a shepherd.
Yeah.
And you need to be their shepherd." And God spoke so clearly through this trip that the pastor he was with, Cecil Pumphrey, some would remember, said, "No, just go back home. That's what you're supposed to do. Go back home." And so he called me up, and he said, "You know what? God's just really speaking to me on this trip, honey. We need to start a church." I started a church. He said, "Now, just wait a minute. John Cairns I know they're getting ready to leave also. Call him up and tell him, don't do anything. I'm on my way back. I want to talk to him." And I thought, okay, he says, "Start a church. What, are you kidding? We're going to start a church now?" I thought, oh my God. I mean, you can see me of little faith.
We're just a young Jewish couple from New York. And now I'm
not going to start a church.
So Phyllis, I want to pause you because
sure.
I know a lot of his side of the story because it's a story that gets told around here. I'm curious because maybe the generations are a little different, but you're a pastor's wife at one of the most well-known, influential churches at that time in the entire country.
Probably in the world at that time even.
What was that like for you? I mean, he was probably very on demand. His time was demanded of. I'd imagine he was in and out of home, kind of at the beck and call of others.
But he loved it.
But what was it like? Yeah, what was it like for you?
I was very involved. I was very involved with women's ministries. I did the weddings, the banquets. I did all that. I was the head of all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And I worked with the gal that was in charge of women's ministries, Sally Holiday. I don't know if people heard she and Sally Holiday were very good friends of ours. And so, I mean, we were busy just ministering, working at and God was really giving favor to my husband. I mean, he taught a class at 9 o'clock in the morning there at Melody Land. It was full. And, what's his name?
Was this the Jewish history class that you gave me the notes for?
I don't remember. It might have been. He taught mostly. But he just taught the Bible,
Okay.
But he did teach a lot of Old Testament, and he would go, just line by line, And it was wonderful because being Jewish, people were, he was, familiar with a lot of the Jewishness, And
yeah.
So yes, and it was a very successful class, and God just, God just gave him favor. He
Yeah.
gave him favor there, and he was really so well loved there, and but it was just time for us to leave one time when things were changing, and
What was that period of time like? You have 3 kids. They're
Yeah.
growing up.
growing up, they were 7, 8, and 9 when we got to the Meadowland.
Okay, so they're like pushing the end of high school, launching into adulthood by the time this is starting to happen.
This church,
Yeah.
yeah. Let's see, they were, yeah, that's right. They were adults.
So kind of a lot of their formative years were done with the 2 of you highly involved at Melodyland.
Well, they even remember the mission days
Okay.
when at Christmas they would just get everything that was brought in.
So when you start, catching wind or hearing stories that maybe not everything is as it appears to be at Melodyland and things are beginning to maybe crack and fall apart a little bit, what is your first reaction?
Well,
Is it devastation? Is it
yeah, it's
we got to
like,
get out of here? What?
Yeah, what do you do? I mean, this was our life now. I mean, we reached what we thought. Our ideas were never to start a church of our own.
Yeah.
It was. We're very content. Noel was associate pastor there, one of the associate pastors. He had his work and ministry that God was using him to do, and he was very involved. And life was good. Was good, to tell you the truth. It was good, and we had nothing in our heads to ever start a church. That was not in our plan.
Yeah. It's interesting because it seems to me like in retrospect, when I'm thinking through your story so far, so now you have this very involved experience of this small-time missions work, of nitty-gritty day-to-day, and then you have this 10-year experience of, in your own words, kind of the showtime. This is like the big time.
Right.
And it seems to me like almost God has built a fence around, there's nothing in planting a church you're not going to be ready for.
Yeah. Well, you just don't know, because you don't know. I mean, you don't even know how. We were a few families
Yeah.
that were supported, wanted to start with us, and said, we're on board.
So when he tells you, I think we're being called to plant a church, it seems to me like he has already internalized that that's what's going to happen.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, are you 100%, you're all on board and I'm all in with you? Or is it like, I need to hear a little bit more about that?
No, I think I was all on board because,
Okay.
we had several of the families, the Karens.
Yeah?
Of course, who was associate pastor with us, started with us. And we had the Brits.
Yeah?
And several of the other families that were the Macaulays that are here now, still here now.
Sure, yeah.
And several other couples. And they used to meet in my house, the men, every week, doing the bylaws of what the church was going to be, the everything. They'd always tease me because I used to serve. I don't cook, I don't want to cook. I'm not a cook. My children survived me though. But I was always snacks. It was always a joke. Phyllis is bringing us snacks all the time, and they organized the church. So we were in good hands.
Yeah.
Because they knew what not to do.
Yeah. Because
knew what
they
not
had
to
just seen it in real time.
They knew what not to do, and they were all from together. So we all knew what we wanted, and we had no idea. We weren't advertising or anything.
Yeah.
We had no idea how many people. So where can we meet? So we were looking for a place to meet. Thought, well, a hotel, that would be a good start.
Yeah.
Hotel, and we would go up and down, with all the hotels in Anaheim there, but nothing was consistent that we could have every Sunday morning.
Okay, so you're looking for like a banquet hall or something to house this church service.
Yeah, that we can be consistent with and have rooms for Sunday school, because Millie was with us. She had to plan for a whole Sunday school. She was the head of the Sunday school at Millerland. And so we were just looking, and finally we found this place. It was called Griswold's then, off the 91 freeway.
Okay.
And I forget what it is now, but it's changed names a million times. And they had a consistent things for us to be there every Sunday with rooms for Sunday school classes. And what we did was the only thing they couldn't give us, I think, was Easter Sunday and Mother's Day, because they had big brunches and they needed the facility.
Okay.
So we were able to get in those days high school, and I think it was Anaheim High School. for those 2 Sundays that we would meet.
Okay.
So everything was like kind of settled.
So I've heard a story. I think I've heard it a couple times. I've never heard you tell it to me. But is it true that the first Sunday that the church meets was the day after your son's wedding? How on earth did that play out?
When my husband said, "You know what? We're going to start the church January 8th," I said,
1984.
"Yeah."
Okay.
I said January 8th. I said, "You know, our son is getting married January 7th." He said, "I know, but God spoke to me in Scripture and said it's the first day of the first month of the first Sunday, however that's what it was. That's when you're to start, and that's what we're doing, son." I said, "Are you crazy?"
So were you planning a wedding and he was planning a church?
Yeah, we were. Yeah, good thing I was the mother of the groom, not the bride.
Oh.
So, yeah, so we were planning, and then we were going to start the church the next day.
Wow. Did you sleep?
Who remembers? I know.
You must not have slept,
I had
yeah.
a son getting married, and the church was starting. We didn't have any idea who was going to show up.
Right. And
We didn't know. We didn't even know how big a facility we needed. So we knew the room held 500 people. Well, who expects 500 people? You're just opening the doors.
Right.
No advertisement.
Yeah.
So we got this facility, and it looked really good. And we had planned already because of Millie. We had a full Sunday school. Because of Peggy and Gus, we had a music to start with. I mean, we had a full church scheduled the first Sunday.
so you had all the pieces from the front and all the logistics. You just didn't know who was going to show up and be there. Yeah, okay.
Correct. And we're sitting there, Ruth Ann, Karen's, and I are sitting in the front row as the church was going to get, people start coming in. And there was a big mirror, it was a banquet hall, so there was,
Just a room covered in mirrors.
yeah, but right in front of us was a big mirror. You could see, of course, people coming in, and we kept seeing people coming and coming and coming, and we would go, "Oh my gosh, look at all these people! Look at all these people!" And the first Sunday, there were 800 people, and we only could accommodate 500. So they stayed with the ushers because we had ushers. It had everything. I mean, it was unusual. It was God.
Yeah.
It was, who starts a church like this? And they were just saying, we're going to go into the second service next week. We're going to have a two services.
They were announcing that from the front before anybody even knew.
We're going to do.
We got to accommodate you. We'll figure it out.
2 services next week, and so we did. And me of little faith. I said to my husband, because you can just imagine after that service, all of us, the Brits, the Karens, that whole group, we were like, so we couldn't even get down from up here. We said, and I said to my husband, "Do you think they'll all come back next week?" That's me of little faith. You know. That's the Jewishness of worry in me.
Okay, so that's January 8th, 1984.
Correct.
By the way, I'm not even born yet in this story.
Oh, isn't that funny? Isn't that funny?
When does there become a serious look towards we got to move out of Griswold's off the 91 freeway when we got to find a permanent home?
Oh, it wasn't very much longer.
It was pretty much like they are going to come back and they're going to keep coming back.
You could just remember we had like I said, we had a full Sunday school. We had a choir director and had a choir. We had everything. Back then you still had choirs, and sure. I mean we just had everything that you needed. And we had a little office, that they rented in Anaheim. So. But we realized, we got to start looking for property or something, And I mean, a church is like a few months old. Where are you going to go? We didn't have money. Yeah. And people were starting to commit financially that we will take care of it. We're going to, and we looked in different places, and this became available. And it needed a lot of work.
Now, this property was a church, and then it was sold to a cult.
Yes.
And
that's what we bought it from.
You bought it from the cult?
Right.
Okay. So, because I've heard stories that even like years later, people were going to paint, and it was a hard time because they'd try to paint over the oil marks people were crossing over every door. Is that?
Probably. They were. It was hysterical because we were praying the spirits out of here, but. But it was everyone was so happy they were working here. They just were working to get this place ready.
I can't imagine the amount of buy-in that people have. They've been through something traumatic. They've come out of it, and now all of a sudden it's like, hey, we're in this together.
Yeah, we were. Everybody was excited. This was their church. And, and everyone knew each other pretty much, because they all came finally back together. It was like the family came home.
Yeah. What was it like to sit in here on the first Sunday? Do you remember that?
It was glorious. We just couldn't believe it. We just couldn't believe it. We're really here, really home.
Yeah.
And everyone was so excited. The pews were full. It was
Just a tangible sense of this is right.
ours. This is ours.
Yeah.
God gave this to us.
Yeah.
And we were able to fix it up. Like I said, we had no. So just ask Millie. She got all the workers. And when nobody says no to Millie Britt, right? So we had workers and workers all over the place. It was wonderful.
I think one of the cool things to sit from start to finish and hear this whole story is it's so obvious that God is weaving this story together. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you hear people's bits and pieces of stories, and over time you got to figure out where the puzzle pieces. One of the cool things about just a long conversation is from the point where you go to rescue Uncle, is it Jimmy?
Kenny.
You go to rescue Uncle Kenny all the way to you're sitting in Orange at 710 South Cambridge. It's pretty clear that God wove all this together.
Mm-hmm. He did.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what, 1985, 86?
Yeah, well, 84 we started, and then we moved in here it was probably 86.
Okay.
I would think.
So you're here, and the church is growing, and it's vibrant, and there's things happening. And what was that like for you?
It was just wonderful, the pastor's wife. And I wasn't a typical pastor's wife. I used to tease all the time. The typical pastor's wife always played the piano.
Okay.
Right? And had blonde hair.
So I had no idea that was a stereotype, so you're going to have to
That was my stereotype.
Okay.
They played the piano, and they had blonde hair.
Okay.
Well, I didn't have any. I didn't play the piano and have blonde hair. I did not fit into I remember somebody once when we were at a retreat, they didn't really know me at the time, and they said, she's the pastor's wife, because I was just playing and having fun with everybody else. She's the pastor's wife. I said,
well, I have to imagine there's some element of that, because I feel like I know you pretty well.
Of course you do.
I feel like you are you, and you have no reason or desire to be anything but you.
That's right.
I got to imagine that there's sometimes that maybe made Noel a little nervous.
Oh, he used to tease and used to go, Lord, it's the woman you gave me. It's the woman you gave me.
But
he
you
had a wonderful sense of humor.
You probably made his life significantly more interesting.
He was just a wonderful man.
Yeah.
And what you saw up here, you saw that was him.
Yeah.
He was just real. He loved people. He loved the people, and the people loved him.
Yeah, I'll, if people they're gonna watch this on YouTube, I'll put a link on the video. But I don't know if you know this, but not long ago we tracked down him telling a chunk of his testimony. I think I had sent it over to you.
Yes.
And that got posted to YouTube, and that's one of the most popular videos we've ever.
Is that right?
People were just so curious about what is the heritage of this church. and. So tell me about that, because I had never heard him speak until I heard that video, and the first thing was, whoa, he's electric as a speaker,
yes.
Wasn't he?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. He really loved the Lord. He just loved the Lord, and it was part of his life. That was his life.
Yeah.
Jesus was his life.
Yeah.
That's why when God took him home, why God? It just didn't make sense.
Are you comfortable talking about that?
Oh, yes, absolutely. It's been 30 years last week. It was 30 years.
Oh, well.
30 years last October 26th was 30 years. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Those 30 years, I'm sure some of them felt like way too slow, and some of them
a whole
happened
generation. But yet he's still so part of me. People would always have said to me, "Oh, Phyllis, you'll remarry," because I was only 54 and he was 55 when he died, and I had the love of my life. I don't want anyone else in my life. This is my life. He's my life. It's like I'm still his wife,
Yeah, and you are.
And I am.
Yeah.
I am.
So walk us through that. So this church begins. They move into this building in 1985, 86.
Right.
He is speaking. He's dynamic. He's energetic. He's got vision. God's speaking to him. All those sorts of things happen. At what year does he start to feel like physically there might be something wrong?
Well, he didn't even know it was just a routine.
Okay.
It was a routine. He died in 91, so this had to be the beginning of, I would say, because the whole process was a year and a half of his illness. So it was probably the beginning of 90.
Okay.
And we had they just changed insurance company, so we needed to have a new primary doctor.
Okay.
And even though the new doctor wants you to have all these tests, because he was only, he was 53, 54 at that time, and so the doctors always want you to go and get tested and all that. He said, we were going on a trip. I think we were going to Israel, if I'm not mistaken. We're taking a group. And he said to me, when I get back, honey, I'm going to have to make an appointment because they're not going to stop bugging me, to do these tests. He said, so I'm just going to do it. And so when we got back, he went and took a test. And they found 3 polyps on his colon. And they said one was benign and one was malignant. So they said, well, we're going to need to go in and just do surgery and get it out. Back in those years, we're talking over 30 years ago now that this happened.
Yeah.
They didn't immediately say, oh, no, we're going to do chemo. Or maybe, you didn't. The doctor did the surgery, removed 16 inches of his colon, and they said, whoever found this saved your life. So we thought it was done. No chemo, he was fine.
Yeah.
But he just never started to really feel good, even though he was ministering all the time. He was pulpit every Sunday, at the office all the time, visiting the sick, and he was just living his life. But he just was never feeling good. And he had, late diabetes when he was, type 2, I think it called. Late onset. And so we kept thinking, well, maybe it's that, maybe it's the diabetes coming, your body has surgery, it's recuperating, and it's changed. And so, but he just wasn't feeling good. So the doctor had said, well, let's just take some more tests, just see, we'll see. Because when the doctor did the surgery, he said, we got everything. There's nothing, we just found this little thing. We looked nothing. So we really thought we were safe to go. And they finally did like I said, different kinds of tests, and they did a liver biopsy. And by that time, it was like, I guess maybe less than a year later, through that process. I lose track of time now, it's so long ago. But they found 3 tumors on both lobes of the liver.
Okay.
And that time they sent us to an oncologist. And I remember sitting at the table in his office, the doctor, Noel and I and the doctor, and he told us, that this was what the situation was, and that they're going to do chemo, but there's no guarantee it's not going to get well. And I remember sitting and looking at the doctor. I said, "Are you telling me that he's dying?" And the doctor looked at me and said, "I want you to understand what I'm telling you. If nothing else goes wrong, he maybe has a year."
Okay.
So that was, could you imagine sitting there?
That was the first time that you had a conversation like that. Mm-hmm. What was his demeanor like when he heard that?
It was solemn, but he was so into the word. I remember he would take the Bible and he would take the, reports, and he'd go, "Am I going to believe this or am I going to believe this?" Yeah. And as long as I have breath, I'm just going to trust God. And I used to say, "But honey, you can't die." I mean, we were so young. Yeah. My children now are older than we were when he died, and that's how I realized how young we were. Yeah. And he used to say, "Honey, heaven's not so bad." That's what he would say to me. Heaven's not so bad. 50 or 100 years from now, none of this is going to matter. We'll all be together. So that was his attitude. I'm going to trust God, and you know what? And he was in the pulpit here up to 4 weeks before he died.
Was it kind of like you took some time to think it through as a family, or was it like immediate, we need to let people know and they'll start praying?
We'd let people know. Right? We never kept anything. He would give reports every week. Every time we went to the doctor, he would be honest with the congregation, the folks, everybody knew.
So up until 4 weeks before he went home with the Lord, was it pretty clear to people like he's beginning to fade?
Oh yeah. Oh, they knew, especially people close to him, because they knew. As a matter of fact, it was amazing. We saw the anointing of the Holy Spirit week after week. I would have to drive us to church. Because he was so weak, he would get up on the pulpit, and you would never even know something was wrong with him.
I've heard multiple people tell me that he looked like he was going to pass sitting in the pulpit, and then it came time, and it was almost like God lifted him up, gave him the message, and then it was over, and it was like...
He would go back in there. Sometimes we think we'd have to call paramedics, because he'd go back in the office over there. And I mean, that's how bad it was. But no, but I mean, they couldn't. I don't think they could really believe it. The ones that weren't close to him, because they saw him up here,
Yeah.
normal, like,
How was it for you to, I mean, your husband at this point is a very public figure. People know him, not just from here, but they know him from Melodyland and
from TBN. He was on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How is it to, you're the one going home and seeing this happen. How is it for you to have to watch your husband, begin to fail physically in front of so many people?
Something, I think it was a lot denial. Really, I think that's how you survive sometimes. It was denial. I think I knew he was very sick, and I knew what the reports were toward the end. But in your mind, you're thinking, well, he's going to be, and I'll take care of him. Oh, he'll just keep living, and I'll take care of him. He's just really not going to die.
Yeah.
Even though he's sick. And so that was, I really do think it's a covering that God gives you, that it's denial, that I know he's sick. I see it, we know it, but he's not really going to die. Just that's the kind of attitude I think I had.
Yeah.
Because when he did pass that day, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, he's gone.
Yeah.
I'm a widow. I mean, that word, widow, it's not, I'm just not real. Just how could this be? And my sons, they were in their mid to late 20s, all three of them, the boys. It was very difficult on them. They would see their dad like that, and they've known stories from all the, men of God that, weren't living lives like they should, and they say, my dad was a godly man. He lived this life. Why? Why? Look at why would God allow this to happen? And and I used to say, not that I was so strong in the in my faith. It just it's not for us to ask why. It's just not. For some reason, His work on earth is done.
Yeah.
I don't get it. The church is thriving. Why would God take him home? We'll know in heaven.
Yeah.
But His legacy lives on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember Peggy McCauley saying to me, she was at the house a couple of weeks before he passed, and he was sitting on a recliner in our family room, and Peggy was sitting at his feet. I'll never forget that. And she was just saying, you know what, Noel, your life is going to be like a big lake, and you throw a pebble in it, and the ripples just go out.
Yeah.
That's going to be what your legacy is.
Yeah.
The ripples will go out. And to this day, I still get things, when I get a note in mail or something, there'll never be another Noel Weiss. You don't know what your husband meant to me. It's just 30 years later.
Yeah.
People are still saying that, because he was so part of all their lives.
Yeah.
He cried with them. He laughed with them. He married them. He counseled them. The babies he dedicated. It's just, I mean, the people here on the staff were little boys.
Yeah.
So it's just a wonderful thing to see what God's still done.
Yeah. In the months and years after that, where did you kind of find yourself? Did you feel like in those moments God was especially close to you? Did you feel like you were searching, you were treading water, trying to figure it out?
Well, treading water, I think, is a good way to put it. I mean, it was like, who am I now? I don't know what else to be. I was a pastor's wife over 30 years, from Melodyland and the mission. I mean, what else who am I?
So very much of your identity was wrapped up in being his wife.
Yeah, because I never had that wanting to be a co-pastor. That wasn't I was so content to be Pastor Noel Weiss's wife. God chose me. He could have chosen any girl that's more talented, more pretty, but thin, more whatever. But He chose me to be His wife. And so who am I now? What do I identify with? That's all I know what to be, is this pastor's wife. And I was happy in my position. I was happy that God called us together, and I got to that place in my life where this is our life, I got to that. And I remember Millie Britt gave me a scripture when I was saying, this is a little after he'd passed. And I said, I don't even know, who am I? And she gave me the Jeremiah 29:11. Plans I have for you are good, not evil, to give you a future and a hope.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many people from that moment on, during that time of my grieving, had sent me that scripture.
Wow.
So that's my scripture.
You hang on to it.
9/11. The plans are good and they're not evil.
Yeah. So, like you said, there's been a generation since then.
Absolutely.
So who are you now?
I'm still Noah Weiss's wife.
Yeah. I knew very early on. I started here it was still Zion when I started.
Was it still Zion?
Yeah,
I didn't
in
remember
fact,
that.
I can't remember in serious detail, but I think I was here probably 8-9 months before we exited this sanctuary to renovate it all. So I can still remember the
you were
red
here
pews. I can
oh,
remember the
okay.
flags. I can't remember all the details. I can't. I do remember all the air bubbles in the carpet. So it was like it was time. Yeah.
You remember the stained glass?
Stained glass back here. Yeah. Yeah, I remember that.
You
But
even had a little Star of David.
I don't remember that. You know what? I have a hard time remembering the place, but I do remember the people. And you were, one of the very first people I remember. Like, I have no idea who on earth that woman is, but she's crazy and she's hilarious, and I got to get to know her. Yeah, that was some of my earliest memories. I remember Natalie and I thinking, like, is it strange that this 80-year-old woman is our best friend at church?
I mean, I was so blessed too when Colton was born, and you had me come to the house to get to
yeah.
That blessed me so much.
It's interesting because he already who does he know? He knows Miss Krista. He knows Mrs. He calls her Camberia.
Oh yeah.
And Miss Phyllis. Yeah. Every now and then while he's bathing, I'll pick up my phone and he'll ask me, "Are you going to FaceTime Phyllis?" Because we used to chat on FaceTime
right.
while he was in the bath.
Yeah, that's right.
But he's a little nervous now that you're going to see his butt. He doesn't want to show that off.
Well, then he's growing up.
Well, so I mean, we're going to wrap up pretty shortly here, but I'm just curious. So 30 years, you have a lot of stories in those 30 years. What would you say God has done in you or through you in those last 30 years?
Well, I think I had to learn for myself.
Yeah.
I didn't have Noah Weiss to ask questions. I mean, I didn't have to, really study. I'm saying that to be facetious. I didn't have to. You should, but I knew.
If you had a question, you knew you could just go home and ask him.
Yeah. Anything I wanted to know, I just asked him.
Was there an element then where you would say, clearly you believed in Jesus, you had accepted him into your heart, you loved him, but there was an element that sort of Noel's faith was also your faith?
Absolutely. Yeah. I remember even someone, we were talking about going to heaven. I said, "Oh yeah, I'm going to heaven, and I'm going to get to see Noel." And I remember God spoke to my heart and said, "You know what, Phyllis? It's not going to heaven and seeing Noel. You just got to say, going to heaven, you're going to see Jesus.
Yeah.
And then Noel, not hi Jesus. Where's Noel?" That's where I was at those days at the beginning.
So what would you say are the big things that God has spoken into you in the last 30 years?
I think just to be consistent with serving God, no matter what.
Yeah.
That God is. He's real. I mean, otherwise, why are we even here? Why are we here? If either you believe it, that it's really, when you go through, I've had to go through a lot of trials during this 30 years. Things, divorce in my family and just very difficult situations. But you know what? I've had to hang on to God, and God has been so faithful to me to give me close friends.
Yeah.
No, really, people have no idea what that's like. You have a good family, and they all love you, and that's wonderful. But when you have close friends, that you could tell them anything, and they still love you.
Yeah.
And God's been so good to me that way. I mean, He really has. And and as these last years of my life that I've lived, it seemed I'm more of a focus. Like I have to keep my focus on heaven. That just seems to be where I'm kind of thinking, what does all this matter? So this life, there are things, trials and things right now in my life that, are not easy for me. But I have to focus. Heaven, it's going to be all better.
Yeah.
It's going to be all better.
We were celebrating Millie's retirement a few weeks ago. Yes. And I was thinking, you were up there with those friends.
That's right.
They've not only been your best friends, but they've been alongside you for a long time. And I was thinking, you know what? There are so many, I had done youth ministry for a decade, and I was thinking, there are so many teenagers that are hurting for just one friend. And you have this group of 5, 6
Right. And
women.
we're all saying we're their best friends.
Yeah, and you're all arguing over who's best friend.
friend.
But how that group, I mean, maybe you've added one or two, but what, 50, 60 years?
When we got to Melodyland, so it was 1972.
1972, so 50 years next year.
Right.
That is incredible.
It is. I mean, when you think about it, I mean, and we really are like family.
Yeah.
We could call each other no matter what time of day, and they'd be there for each other. I mean, it is a blessing to know that.
They're true friends in the
They are.
Christian sense.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can tell them anything. They know all about me.
And they still like you?
They love me. Tell me they love me.
I think they're telling the truth.
Oh, thank you.
As we wrap up and just kind of finish our time, what would you want people to know about you? If let's say they saw you, maybe they sit over way on this side of the sanctuary, they've seen you 100 times, they've never talked to you. What would you tell them? Approach me and...
I was just going to say, come see me. Just this last Sunday, there were a couple, he plays guitar. And the first time he came over and introduced himself to me, I said, can you imagine we sit right opposite each other in the aisles, and it's the first time we talked.
Yeah.
So come down and see me. I'm old. I don't want to go walking around. But no, really, I just love to meet people. I don't remember names very well, but...
I would say that's been your gift to us, is you are incredible at making people feel welcome right away. And I'll tell you what it is. It's that you're willing to be honest. Even your little bit that you just said, that until Noel passed, that in large part your faith was tied up with him being the pastor.
Right.
I think there's a lot of people who'd be really nervous to say that out loud, like somehow people will look down on me. But I think those little things put us at ease immediately. And I think that's a gift of God in you, that everybody who knows you loves you. It doesn't matter if they're your peer or they're my 3-year-old son. And so I think that's a gift that God has put in you. And I'm so grateful to consider you my friend.
I'm blessed to have you in my life.
I can't believe you said yes to this. And let's see, we've been sitting here for, you want to guess? 2 hours. 2 hours, yeah.
Oh my gosh, who's going to listen to this for 2 hours?
A lot. I guarantee you a lot of people.
God, 2
When I told people that I'm gonna have Phyllis on for 2 hours, people were like, when is it coming? I want to listen.
Oh, you're kidding.
No,
my goodness.
It's been a privilege to sit and chat with you. I hope that people, I hope that they get a real glimpse like I have as I've been sitting here of who you really are.
Well, I love you. You know that, Andy.
I love you too.
I love you.
Well,
thank you so much.
Absolutely. Well, we'll sign off. Yeah, we're all done.